Welcome to Mimika TV. I'm your host, Mimika Cooney. I'm honored to be with you on this journey towards empowering you to succeed in faith, leadership, and business.
What I realized was, despite working really hard, despite grinding and hustling, that I wasn't actually doing what God had called me to do. God has not called us to hustle and grind. God has called us to work under grace. God has called us to work under rest. God has called us to be able to work by the Spirit and not by our own works.
Welcome to Mimika TV. I'm your host, Mimika Cooney. Today we're talking about how to land more high-paying clients using kingdom sales principles. Shawn Q is an entrepreneur, best-selling author, international speaker, marketer, and founder and CEO of the Christian Entrepreneur Academy. For more than 10 years, Shawn has coached surgeons, actors, entrepreneurs, political candidates, coaches, pastors, and even the homeless to greater levels of success. He has seen people do things they never thought possible. So welcome, Shawn Q, to the show. I'm so excited to have you on.
Hey, Mimika, so glad to be on.
Now, I know we took a few swings to get you on the show, but I'm so excited to be able to share your story. And you've got some really great principles you're going to share with us, because you are really doing some great things for Christian entrepreneurs, especially in the space of encouraging them to reach higher achievements. But you're going to give us some really good content, especially about the term about value and charging money. I know a lot of us are a little uncomfortable when it comes to the subject, but it's really needed, because I know that's what God wants of us, is to be prosperous so we can help the rest of the kingdom. But before we go into the juicy bits, tell our audience a little bit about your story and how you got doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, so that bio in regards to being a best-selling author, being a speaker, that is so amazing, but it hasn't always been that way. I remember there was a time in middle school where I gave myself scars that I still have on my wrist because I didn't value the life I was given. I grew up in an incredibly abusive childhood. And in high school, in 9th grade, 3rd period French class, I remember having a blade to my wrist and thinking, if all I was made for is to feel pain, might as well end it now. And I remember God spoke to me and he said, there has been enough blood shed on that cross, and all I want to do is love you. I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to be with me. And it was at that moment that I realized that my life was called for legacy. My life was designed with purpose, and that I had a destiny that was bigger for myself. Now, a lot of that didn't come to me immediately. I was still incredibly broken, incredibly bonded to bad habits, horrible addictions, the things that were keeping me in a state of depression. And what was amazing was God didn't say, stop doing that. God said, just spend time with me. And so as I began to get into my word, as I began to pray, as I began to go to church and actually listen to what the preacher was saying, I began to build this relationship with Christ where obedience became a reaction or an effect of abiding. God doesn't want us to obey like robots. He wants us to abide with him, to be present with him, to build relationship with him. And obedience is an afterthought. Obedience is a result of abiding and building relationship with him. And so obedience became really easy. But what's interesting is I started a business. My very first business was when I was in 5th grade. I was selling paper wallets for a quarter because I wanted a brownie at the cafeteria. The lunch lady would sell them on the side, and I didn't have a quarter. And so I would sell paper wallets for a quarter to get the brownie. And God reminded me of my entrepreneurial desires. So in high school, I actually started my very first business. But I also brought a lot of my brokenness, a lot of my bondage, a lot of my depression into that business. I thought if I could start a successful business, if I can make a whole lot of money, then all of that will go away. But the reality is I brought that into my business. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are broken, who are bonded by things that are holding them back, slowing them down, that think if I start a business, I'll find freedom. But the only freedom that's ever long-lasting comes from Christ. It doesn't come from entrepreneurship. And so God gave me a direction. He said, no, don't go into business right now. First, focus on you. Focus on becoming holy. Focus on becoming righteous. Focus on your routines and your habits and your day-to-day. Focus on building relationship with me. And so I said, okay, I let that business go, and I began to do a lot of personal development. I began to do a lot of spiritual development. I began to do a ton of assessments to see who I was created to be, and began to develop a lot of self-awareness and God awareness. Oftentimes we dive into personal development because we want to be amazing. And yet we lose sight of focusing on who God has created us to be and who God is and our relationship with God. Because there's going to be moments where I'm sure you felt like an imposter, or I'm sure you felt insecure, where you're comparing yourself with everybody else out there who is either a success overnight, right? And it's taken them 40 years to get that overnight
totally
success, right?
Smarter, cleverer, more money, and always a comparison, especially you just need to go to Instagram or Facebook and like, oh my gosh, I'm like, FOMO.
Exactly. And we live in a filtered world. Literally everything on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, everything is filtered by the lens of how are others going to see me. So we don't reveal vulnerability very often. We don't reveal the failures. We only reveal the successes. And so we're looking at this news feed. We're scrolling through people's successes without seeing their journeys. And so it's very easy for us to compare their successes with our own journeys. And so I began to spend time with God. And as you begin to spend time with God, as you begin to realize who God has created you to be and what your kingdom assignment is, comparison washes away, competitiveness washes away, insecurity washes away, and imposter syndrome washes away, because it has nothing to do with who you are. It has everything to do with who God is and what God wants to do in and through you. And so I went through this entire journey of restoration, of figuring out who I was and letting go of all of that bondage. And then there was this opportunity to join ministry, specifically as an intern at the church I had attended. And I decided I'm going to go all in. I gave kind of my own flesh 2 years to do whatever I wanted. I'm going to give this internship. I'm going to give full-time ministry 2 years. I did the 2-year internship. I ended up getting hired at the church as a video producer and became one of the youngest managers, if not the youngest managers at the church, specifically because I worked really, really hard. And what I realized was, despite working really, 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 really hard, despite grinding and hustling, that I wasn't actually doing what God had called me to do. God has not called us to hustle and grind. God has called us to work under grace. God has called us to work under rest. God has called us to be able to work by the Spirit and not by our own works. And I had to make a realization that I'm not going to hustle and grind my way to success. I'm going to fit in my kingdom assignment, and I'm going to allow God to guide me through it. Because where God is, there's favor, there's anointing, and there's peace. There's not this anxiety that grinding and hustle brings. And so I was in full-time ministry, and I began to realize, okay, I don't want to do ministry under my own works. I want to do ministry under grace. And I worked at this ministry for about 8 years, and I was actually preparing to become a pastor. I thought I was going to be a pastor. And after those 8 years, God had spoke to me and he said, this is not what I've called for you. And I said, what? And he said, you're not where I've called you to be. And I was like, God, I'm literally working in your church. This isn't what you've called for me. You sure?
Like, you left it this long? Couldn't you have told me this earlier? But wasn't there a lesson in that? There was something you wanted you to learn in that process.
100%. One, working under grace and not over grind. And then also being able to really focus on who I was and my spiritual development. I needed those 8 years in order to be doing what I do now. And so he told me that, and he reminded me of my entrepreneurial desire. He reminded me of 5th grade of the paper wallets. And so I said, okay, so I quit. I started my own business, and it flopped. We made a lot of money, but it cost a lot of money, and I didn't really understand the finances of it. And so we didn't really make any type of money. It wasn't profitable and it wasn't scalable. So I went to Google and I looked up a local business conference. Literally, I went to Google and typed in those exact words. And I found one that sounded perfect for me. It was for startups. It was for people who were just getting started. And it was discovering the process to start up without all the resources of a big company. And that was me. I didn't have a ton of resources at the time. I didn't have a team or staff. It was literally me in my room at 2 a.m. figuring it out. And so I went to this conference. It was 8 hours away, but I didn't go as an attendee because I could not afford the ticket. The ticket was about $3,500 for the base ticket. And at that time, there was no way I could afford that. So I scoured their website. I found a random email address and I emailed them. And I said, I can't afford the ticket, but I can move chairs. I can help with registration. I can shake hands. I can be a room monitor. Whatever you need from me, I just want to be in the room where people are smarter than me about business and I can acquire something. And so what was really interesting was God spoke to me at that moment. And he said, you don't need the resource. You just need to be resourceful. You can get in the room without a ticket. And so I went, drove 8 hours. I didn't realize it was 8 hours away, but I drove 8 hours and I volunteered. I did everything I could. In the email, I mentioned I have some video production background. So, backstage stuff is probably where I'll be most useful. But if I can't do that, I'll do whatever. And so they assigned me to registration. They assigned me to be a room monitor. So I was literally the guy in the back of the room, just making sure everyone had what they needed, passing out flyers, doing things like that. The day after the first day, I get a phone call from the volunteer manager. And she says, hey, you mentioned you have some video production background. Our stage manager is throwing up in the room. We can't do the show without him. Like, do you think you can fill that role? And I said, absolutely. So I go, I was fully prepared. I did it. I wowed them. They were amazed. I go back home, think, wow, that was an amazing experience. I got this opportunity to really serve them. But I get a call 2 weeks later from the CEO. And the CEO says, Shawn, you were here at the right time, at the right moment, doing the right things with the right skill set. We want to hire you for our next event. We want to pay you $10,000. We want to put you in a suite. We want to fly you out. We want to take care of you. We need you at our next conference. Now, inside, I'm like dancing for joy.
Oh my gosh. Like, what?
I'm like, this is amazing. The most money I've ever made in a weekend. And I'm getting taken care of like I'm royalty. This is amazing. And so I'm like, yes, absolutely. I'll do whatever I need to make sure the conference goes well. So they hire me for the next one. And what was amazing was God took me as a room monitor in the back of the room to being backstage, having meetings and connecting and shaking hands with these amazing influencers like Pat Flynn, Michael Hyatt, Gary Vee, Damon John, just a wide, Richard Branson, just a wide variety of amazing influencers and successful business people. Eventually, word kind of gets around and I began to produce other conferences and I began to work with some pretty massive marketing conferences. And one thing that I began to do was I said, I'm not just going to produce these events. I'm not just going to help with these events. I want to actually listen to the content and apply it when I get home. And so I began to develop a marketing skill. I said, people aren't born marketers. They learn how to market. People aren't born salespeople. They learn how to sell effectively. People aren't born successful entrepreneurs. They learn how to do it. And so I said, I'm going to learn how to be successful. And so I applied everything that I learned at these conferences that I was producing. I built incredible relationships with these incredible influencers. And I remember backstage, there was one point where somebody said, Shawn, if you ever want job security, career security, business security for the next decade, learn sales. Now, for me, sales was icky. Sales was the car salesman who was trying to get as much from you as he possibly could, trying to manipulate you, my very first car that I bought, I probably spent $10,000 more because I was naive and had no idea what I was doing. And that's their goal, is to get as much money from you, as much from your wallet as possible. And I thought that was very unchristlike. I didn't want to do anything outside of what God was doing. And so I said, that's cool, but I'll just focus on this other stuff. But then I wasn't making any money. I was focusing on my website and I'd tinker with my website for a month, but then I wouldn't have any clients. I'd build my Facebook group and then I'd have no clients. I wasn't making any money with any of the activities that I was doing. And I realized that there were some activities that would lead directly to a client and some activities that would be supportive of the client process or client acquisition process, but it wasn't directly leading to a client. It was maybe a long-term game. And so I said, okay, let me figure out what those short-term, like how do I get a client now? And what I realized was the power of conversation. When you have a conversation with people, you have their attention. When you're on Facebook, you're one in literally hundreds of millions who are actively on Facebook. So you're vying for attention. Literally, if you have a group, no matter how big it is, you're vying for the attention of people in your community. If you're live streaming, if you're creating content, you're vying for the attention of other people. But when you're in a one-on-one conversation with people, they're not looking anywhere else but directly at you. You have their complete and total attention. And what's really powerful about a conversation is I discovered that it's not about being sleazy, pushy, manipulative. It's simply about being a resource. It's not about being an order taker. Like, let me tell you what you can order and you better order it now. And if you don't buy it, then you're a loser. Or being really, really aggressive. But it's about saying, okay, how can I be a strategizer? How can I help you in this conversation. And if we can continue to further work together, we can have that conversation, but let me just be a resource. And I learned service first is the principle that I needed to use in my conversations rather than sales first, which is what a lot of people are doing right now. They say, look at what I have to offer.
Exactly. The marketing world, right? It's like, oh, you got to look on Facebook and scroll. And I mean, I don't know about you. Like if I'm scrolling at night at 8 p.m., every second post is an ad. And for me, I'm as a marketer, I'm like taking screenshots. Oh, interesting ad. I wonder why, start doing the research. How did they find me? But at the end of the day, that's the thing is everything is so marketable, especially here in the US, as you can tell. I'm from South Africa, and this is like a whole nother world. But and I think wouldn't you say like Christian entrepreneurs, it's that yucky feeling like, well, if I ask for money or if I ask for the sale, I feel like I'm being non-Christian. But that's not the principle, right? What we're actually trying to show them is it's the value we're offering. And you said, which is a great example is, and what I love about your story is you were willing to be in service and humble yourself, and then you were lifted up, which is totally awesome.
Yeah, the Bible is very clear. The workers deserves his wages. Deuteronomy 8:18 says, remember the Lord your God, for it is he, God, who gives you the ability and permission to produce wealth. So he can keep the covenant or the promise that he made to your forefathers. He's literally giving you permission to go make money. The Bible is incredibly clear. I mean, you look at one of my favorite people, obviously Jesus is number one, but my second favorite person in the Bible is a guy named Joseph, and he's from this place called Arimathea. Joseph of Arimathea was the guy who was rich enough to have a private tomb, who had influence enough to speak to Caesar, and who had affluence to be able to say, Caesar, you just crucified Christ. I have a private tomb, though. Let him rest in my tomb. Jesus Christ would have been given to the Pharisees, and we know what they felt about him. But Joseph of Arimathea said, no, let him use my private tomb. He was wealthy enough, influential enough, and affluential enough to get Christ into the private tomb, in which 3 days later, he rose again. You look at Solomon, you look at David, you look at Abraham, you look at Joseph. All of these amazing, incredible people were people of wealth, or who were developed into wealth and influence and power. God has not called us to be weak or wimps or poor. He's not. Humility does not equal poverty. A lot of people think, I just want to make enough to survive. When God hasn't called us to survive, God has called us to thrive. God has called us to be resourced with enough things, not just to pay the bills and take care of your family. That's awesome.
But we want to help others, right? When we are in a position of strength, we can help others too, right? If you are affluent, you can then help someone start it. I mean, you just look at the Jewish communities, or my father is Greek, and I know the communities like, people get married and everyone pools together. They give the newlyweds a new house or a car, or set them up with money to get them going. And that's the beauty of community, right? Instead of feeling like, oh, well, I can't charge enough. I got to be humble. So if we had to break this into tips, like what would you say to our audience if they're in that situation, they know God's called them to be prosperous, to have a successful business so they can invest back into the kingdom? What would you say would be a good tip that they can start working on to sort of change that mindset?
Yeah, so there are 3 things you should do literally today after you listen to this. Write this down. Number 1 is vision. So write that word down, vision. What I want you to do is I want you to do an exercise I call the what else activity. So what do you want right now? Literally just write down everything you want. That's your first question. What do you want right now? For some of you, it's, I want to make $10,000 a month, right? I want to hit that 6-figure mark. For some of you, it's, I just want to be able to pay the bills. For some of you, it's, I want to hire that next team member. For some of you, it's, I need that next client. What do you want right now? Write it all down as much as you can. And then I want you to ask this question. After you've done that, because that's inevitable, you're going to be able to pay the bills. You're going to be able to hire that team member. You're incredibly capable. God has given you such strength to accomplish so much, and God will do what you can't do on your own. So what you want right now, that's inevitable. That's what you're going to pursue. What else do you want? So after you've written everything you've wanted right now, let's say you've already achieved it. You wake up in the morning, you got that team member, you got that client, you're making that 6-figure mark. What else do you want? And then I want you to spend some time and write that down. For some people, a lot of people write down, I want to create a shelter. I want to create a rehabilitation center. I want to be able to help this type of group. I want to be able to help abused women, or rescue people from human trafficking, or build schools, or dig wells. I mean, that's really where the passion comes up. So I want you to write that down. And then after you've written what else you want to do, I want you to ask this question. What else? We limit our vision to our circumstances too often, rather than saying, okay, what am I going to push for? What am I going to drive for that's outside of my circumstances? Circumstances don't define your choices. You define your circumstances. You can say, okay, this is seasonal because I'm going after that. Or you can say, okay, this is all I'm willing to dream about. So start to dream. God's given you the ability to imagine. God's given you the ability to dream. Spend some time and dream. What else do I want? Because what's going to happen is every day you're going to wake up pursuing that what else. What would happen if every day you were energized enough to pursue that and not just, okay, I need to pay the bills? There's a different way to show up in the world, and that's the what else activity. So number one, vision. Number two, stop asking why. Too many people.
That's a hard one, right? We're always asking, like, God, why this and why that? Why is that such a problem?
So the reason why you should not ask why is primarily because it does one of two things. Number one, it reveals intent, which is great, right? Like, why do you want to do this? Well, I want to do it to pay the bills and do all that. Great. Or I want to be able to do it to do the rehabilitation center, or because I want to do the whatever. Or it leads to anger and frustration and depression. Why did this happen to me? Why is this not working for me? Why? And what happens is your mind begins to create reasons that dig you deeper into the circumstance. So instead of asking why, start asking where. And there's two questions I generally want you to ask here. Where are you currently? And be brutally honest. Don't think, okay, where am I going to be in a month? Where are you right now? How many clients do you have? What does your team like? What are you currently offering, and at what price? What price are you comfortable with? And what would be stretching out? The stretch out price, that's what you should really be charging, by the way. Where are you currently? Be brutally honest about that. Then what I want you to ask is the second question. Where do you want to be in 3 months, in 90 days? Just 3 months, 90 days, 1 quarter. Where do you want to be there? What kind of processes, what kind of team, what kind of strategy do you want to have implemented and tested? Too often, our day becomes Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, another email, and we live a notified life. So a notification comes up and we follow the notifications all day long, and then we think, why didn't I get anything done? Instead of focusing on the notifications, focus on where you want to be in 90 days and go really hard on that for the next 90 days. Focus on one thing for the next 90 days. Where do you want?
So that kind of keeps you focused. Like, so when you get the shiny objects, like, oh, squirrel, what is that? That cute little app. You're like, no, this isn't going to get me to where I want to be. And this is how I'm going to get there. So if we had to break that down, would you say practical stuff? Like for me, I can't organize myself without my Google Calendar. If I don't block time, even for exercise, it ain't getting done. Would you say that's more of a practical view?
Yeah. So there's, you can definitely put it in your calendar. My calendar is filled with everything that I need to do in the day. Calendars are great. Accountability is even better. So telling someone, hey, this is what I want to achieve in the next 90 days. Keep me accountable. Check in on me. Telling your spouse, my wife is my number one person to keep me accountable. Every night she says, how much closer are you to your 90-day goal? Telling some friends that I hang out with, specifically, you are a sum of the people you hang out with. The Bible's clear. The wise hang out with the wise, the fools with the foolish. So there are people that I specifically build a relationship with that are much smarter than me that I say, hey, this is what I want to achieve in the next 90 days. Keep me accountable. Ask every time you see me at church, every time you see me at lunch, every time we run into each other, ask me about it because I need help staying focused. Distraction isn't a bad thing. It's naturally what our brain does. Our brain is curious. And so when a notification comes up, I'm curious, what is that, right? It's just what our brain naturally does. And distraction is just curiosity run amok. Like, okay, let me go look at that. Oh, let me go look at this video. Oh, I wonder what she said about this. Oh, I wonder what the politics look like today, right? Like it's our curiosity run amok. So instead of allowing our curiosity to drive our day, allow accountability to drive your day. And so there's a couple of practicals on where. And then the third thing, so the first one was vision. Second one was strategy. Asking where you currently are and where you're going to be helps you develop a strategy, which is simply how you're going to get there for that 90 days. The third thing is have more conversations. So write that word down, conversations. There are two types of marketing. There's attraction marketing and there's initiative marketing. Attraction marketing is where you create something like a blog, like this podcast, like a website, like a funnel, like a Facebook group. You create something hoping to attract the people that say, hey, that's really amazing. I want to know more about that. Where they are attracted to you because of what you create. Initiative marketing is instead of creating, you initiate. You go have conversations. You literally write a list of the 25 people you have numbers to you can call right now. And you simply say, hey, this is what I'm working on. Do you know anyone who would benefit from having a conversation with me? I'm not trying to sell. I'm not being a sleazy salesperson. I'm just genuinely trying to have a conversation with someone. I do that probably once every 4 or 5 months. I write a list of 100 people and I reach out to all of them. And I say, hey, how have you been doing? How has life been? How can I serve you? How can I help you? What do you need right now? Hey, let me tell you what I've been up to. And let me tell you how you can help me. So many people are afraid to tap into relationship capital, relationship access, because they don't want to feel like a sleaze. But when you go in first, helping them, how can I help you? And then you say, this is how you can help me. People love to help you. They want to support you. They want to see you succeed. You just have to create an opportunity for them to help you. And then let me just give you kind of a bonus. So many people in conversations have really good conversations, but then it gets to the money part.
Or they want to ask for the sales, like, awkward, what do we say now?
And then you get really weird, right? Two things happen. You become really passive. You're like, oh, well, we can work with your budget. And like, oh, no, well, I'll give you a ton of discounts. And like, you're just like super needy and passive, or you're really aggressive and you're really pushy and you're really sleazy and manipulative. And we don't want to be either of those. Right? We want to be firm in understanding what our value is. So what I teach my students is specifically this transition bridge. Would you like to hear more about what it would look like if you and I work together? So have a really good conversation.
Oh, that's good. You're gonna have to say. Let's say that again. That is definitely tweetable.
So have a really great conversation, and then when you know, okay, I can help this person, say this. Would you like to hear more about how you and I can work together? That's it. You're not saying, do you want to buy my stuff? You're not asking for finances or money at this point. You're simply asking, would you like to hear more? And that's an easy yes for someone because all they're getting is information. And if you've served them powerfully already in the conversation, they want to reciprocate. And so they'll say, sure, what do you got to offer? Now, most people rush into the sale. Well, let me tell you about my best package and it's going to cost this much and it's going to be, no, slow it down. You don't even know if they qualify to be a client of yours. You get to choose your clients. So what I like to say is, well, let me tell you about the type of clients I work with. And then I describe who they have to be in order to work with me. And then I say, let me share with you how we can work together. And I give them my methodology. These are the phases or the steps by which you're going to achieve your result. I'm not talking about my package. I'm simply talking about the steps they need to take. And what this does is it serves them because they gain clarity about, oh, this is how I need to achieve this result that I need or overcome this obstacle. Until I've defined who I work with, how I work with them, and the type of people they have to be in order to work with me, I'm not ready to talk about my offer. So we have to talk about that first, and then we can say, okay, let me tell you the best way we can work together. And then we talk about the offer.
So kind of you're waiting for them to initiate or give you like a response, like, can I share you how we can work together? Or how did you say? Do you want to hear more about how we can work together? Because that's a very open-ended question.
Yeah. So what I do is I say that. I initiate that. I don't wait for them to say it. I say it and I say, would you like to hear a little bit more about how you and I can work together? Would you like to hear a little bit more about how you and I?
It's not pushy. It's not salesy. It's kind of an invitation. And I love how you say that, you can decide who you're going to work with, because through that conversation, you'll determine whether either somebody's in the right mental mindset position, or they're all ready to take action, or if they're in the best financial position. Because wouldn't you say as well, I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure I'm speaking for many out there, I don't want to push somebody into working with me if it's going to be a financial strain, because then it'll just cause more issues down the road.
Yeah, so I would say that a bad client is going to cost you more than having no client at all. And I tell my students, don't take a 9 out of 10 client, take a 10 out of 10, a heck yes client only, and reserve space for those type of people. Those are the people who love paying you on time, who don't blame you when things don't go, when you do the work, they do the work, and the test fails. They don't negatively talk to you. You're not anxious to check your email inbox, hoping they haven't sent you something, right? There are so many things that define a bad client. And so you want to be able to figure out, is this a client that I'm going to wake up in the morning and be excited about working with? Because that's when your best work comes out. Or am I just in this for the money? Because you'll take clients, I know I have when I first got started, that I regretted taking, but I needed because I needed the money. But the reality is, if you focus less on the money and you focus on serving people and having powerful conversations where you work with only your dream clients, the money takes care of itself. That's what I've realized. So I'd rather work and wait for a dream client than take a client I know is going to pay me late, who's going to say, I'm not going to pay you this month because we didn't get the results, even though we all did the work and just the test failed, or who's going to constantly complain to me. I had a client once call me at 1 a.m. This was a local client, and said, you have to be at my house or I'm going to fire you in the next 10 minutes. And I went because I didn't know my value. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know that I had control over the boundaries I set up in my business. And so don't take a bad client. Let me save you from that misery. Wait out for the dream clients, weed out for the dream clients, and speak out your dream clients. This is the type of people I work with. Does that sound like you? Because if it's not, that's okay. We're just not right for each other.
Yeah, it's kind of like, business relationship is a relationship. You got to know that there's going to be value for both, because I know I made the same mistakes as you have, desperate for the money. So you take on a client, even though you have that I shouldn't really do this. And usually it's the clients who pay the least who give you the most hassle, because they don't have a understanding of value, and they don't respect your boundaries, as you said, or your time. So they're not going to respect the result you create. So definitely. So what other things, if you had to kind of wrap it up into one takeaway tip, and you want people to remember this, what would be the most important element you want them to remember?
Yeah, so you can work on your website. You can hack that funnel. You can write copy. You can live stream. You can build your Facebook group for the next 90 days. I guarantee it's not going to get you a client right now. Why? Because those are low impact, low yielding activities when it comes to client creation. The number one thing that you can do if you need a high paying client right now is talk to more people. Get into one-on-one conversations with people. Go initiate conversations rather than wait for people to reach out to you to say, hey, I want to work with you. It's going to take you a lot more time to build the know, like, and trust factor. It's going to take a lot more time and effort to build an audience that is interested in what you have to offer than it will if you just go initiate conversations, reach out to your relationship capital, and be able to leverage the fact that people want to help you and you want to help them as well.
Exactly. So it's kind of creating those opportunities in order to get in front of people, because it is. It's like when you have somebody like, now we're chatting, I can see you can see, body language, you can actually have a conversation in real life. You are able to shortcut a lot of sales copy. Like, you don't have to put all these filters. You can be able to, really hear how you can serve people. So I love those tips, and so relevant today. And I really appreciate that. Well, would you be willing to pray for our audience? Because I know there's so many of us listening out there who just love to have other people stand in agreement and help them move into that next level.
Yeah, let's do it. Father God, thank you so much for being such a good God, for being our provider, our creator, our transformer, our comforter, our peace giver, our client creator. Thank you, God, that we are not reliant on clients to provide for us, that you provide for us. I thank you, God, for allowing us to level up our skill and our capability and our ability to be able to sell powerfully and effectively. Thank you, God, that we are not worshiping money, but we are also not afraid of money, that we can stand powerfully confident with a sound mind, knowing what you have given us as far as skill and knowing what we can charge. I pray and I thank you, God, that you show us how to have powerful conversations that serve people. I pray and I thank you, God, for every single person who's listening, whatever their circumstance, whether they're in a circumstance where they have a ton of success and they're just bored. They don't know how to get to that next level. They haven't been challenged in a long time. They have just a bunch of yes men around them. Or whether they're just starting out, they have no idea how to get to their next milestone. They have no idea how to make the money, or they're somewhere in between. I thank you, God, that you are not a God of circumstance. You are a God of promise, and that you have promised us to be the capability to produce wealth. You've promised us the ability to seek wisdom and find it. You've also promised us confidence in going to the throne room, to being able to abide and be present with you so that you can give us the vision. You can give us the strategy. I thank you, God, for a divine blueprint for every single person, that we won't be guru or expert driven, but we'll be spirit led. I thank you, God, that even though we can learn from so many influencers out there, that our desire is to learn what you've called for us. Now, you open doors no man can open. You close doors no man can close. I thank you, God, that you are rising up a generation after generation of powerful kingdom-driven entrepreneurs who are ready to stand in the marketplace and make a difference in this world, who are ready to live incredible lives of generosity, who are ready to create impact and not just focus on income, who are ready to focus on legacy and not just luxury. I thank you, God, that we are pursuing something greater than everyone who is just pursuing money. I thank you, God, that we're pursuing meaning and we're pursuing purpose. I pray and I thank you, God, for Mimika. Thank you for her. I thank you for her ability to create such an amazing platform. And I pray that you continue to level up her vision and her strategy. Thank you in Christ's name we say, amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I'm like, yes, stand in agreement, because you just need, having that accountability and having, knowing that somebody else is in the same situation praying for you. That, because wouldn't you say entrepreneurship can be pretty lonely? Like sometimes we feel like it's just me, myself, and I, and God, which is the big difference between us and those in the world, right? At least we have a higher power and a higher source that can really give us that. So I really appreciate that. But tell everybody, how can they get in touch with you and find you online?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, www.thelegacytribe.com. The legacy, because we're focused on legacy and creating something that inspires other people to be able to level up their own life. And tribe, because we're a family. We lock arms and do life together. So thelegacytribe.com. You can also visit our Facebook group called Christian Entrepreneurs Building Your Business with Purpose.
Definitely. And we'll have these links in the show notes. And I would advise you, if you're listening and you enjoyed what Shawn had to say today, please go and share it with your friends. I'm sure there's somebody else who could really benefit from hearing today, or put it on rewind and take some notes, because I know I sure am going to go back and listen to this again. And if you have any comments or aha moments or sort of revelations or questions, do add that in the comments, whatever platform you're watching or listening on. Scroll below the video and let us know. We would love to, keep the community going. And if you want more freebie resources that I only share with my newsletter community, go to mimikacooney.com, and I have a bunch of freebies you can get, including a free ebook called Mindset Makeover, How to Renew Your Mind and Walk in God's Authority, as well as information about how to build your platform with a purpose. So if you want to reach people for God's kingdom using smart marketing strategies, definitely go and check that out today. But I'm going to say thank you so much, Shawn, for being with me here today. I so appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mimika. I had so much fun.
Well, until next time, everybody, take care. Are you ready to build a platform with a purpose? Come to mimikacooney.com and download your free checklist, How to Build Your Platform in 30 Days.